25 years after our constitution was adopted, 18 million South Africans who live in the former homelands still have limited recognition of land tenure. This week, there's a conference about land tenure rights. We're joined now by the Land and Accountability Research Centre Director, Nolundi Luwana. Nolundi, good afternoon to you, and thank you very much indeed for your time. After the ANC's conference in 2017, there was an intensified discussion around land. There was a lot of talk around the Ingonyama Trust. The former President Kgalema Motlanthe had comments to make about that. Are people living in communal areas, people living in areas where land is held in trust, are they any closer to having more control over the land they've occupied for generations than they did, say, maybe 10 years ago?
Thank you so much for having me, Stephen. The honest answer is quite a blunt no. People who live in communal areas are no more secure now than they were 10 years ago. Even though there has been a lot of promise around making changes to the land reform project in South Africa, that has not been delivered upon. And so, as you point out, there was a conference held by the ANC in 2017. There was the high-level panel process that was led by former President Motlanthe in 2018. There was a presidential advisory panel in 2019. All of these processes yielded reports that give an indication that there is indeed serious issues with land reform, and particularly serious issues with protecting the rights of rural citizens who live on communal land. And yet we are in pretty much the same position that we were in before any of these interventions. So progress really has been slow.
There's a huge tension in our society on this. So traditional leaders say they need to hold the land communally, they need to hold it in trust for future generations. There's an argument that people should have tenure. They'll be allowed to sell the land, they'll be allowed to make sure their children inherit it. The argument against that, to oversimplify and put it incredibly bluntly, is that rich white people would buy the land from them and they'll remain without the land. Which direction do you think we should move in?
So I think that this sort of paternalistic notion that we need to protect people from themselves can be quite problematic. People who are seeking tenure of their land are not necessarily looking to make rash decisions around sale. In fact, for them, it's about ensuring that that land remains in their families for generations, and that they feel secure enough to begin initiatives that could provide food, that could provide opportunities of employment for local communities. So I think that the direction that we should move in is the direction that people are calling for, that community members are calling for themselves, which is a direction that provides them with security, acknowledges their agency, and recognizes that we don't necessarily need to adopt this overly protective approach, because people have a deep understanding of what their land means to them and wouldn't be parting with it for frivolous reasons.
One of the dangers is, and in a way you've already alluded to it, we keep talking about land all the time. In a way, I've sort of watched the land debate come and go. It will always be with us because it's one of the major bases of racialized inequality in South Africa. But sometimes we talk about it for a year, then it kind of goes away, then it comes back. The Constitution still hasn't been changed, for example. Is the danger then that largely black people will remain landless and nothing will change simply because, I don't know, the politicians can't agree?
That's exactly the danger. In fact, I wouldn't even say that it's a future danger. I think that it's a current situation that we're in. People at this point see very little progress. They hear massive promises, absolute kind of dedication from the state and from government when it comes to periods of election, and then we have these long periods of absolute silence. And so part of the reasoning behind this conference is recognizing that there has been a lot of silence around the land question in recent years, and this is hopefully a mechanism to generate further discussion, to put this back on the national agenda, and to reiterate the point that people are making, which is we're still here, we're still insecure, and this is an issue that does need to be dealt with promptly.
Nolundi Luwana, thank you very much indeed, Director of the Land and Accountability Research Centre.